Morning, folks. This is where it separates the men from the boys, I suppose. Everyone either didn't go out and party last night or was able to actually ride the hangover in here this morning. For those of you that did see the show last night, what'd you guys think of it? Yeah, I have to admit, I was a little trepidatious at first about it, and I was pretty happy with what I saw. But we're going to go ahead and get rolling here with Diane Barrett from the UAT. And I can never remember, that's the University of Applied Technology, right? Advancing Technology. Yeah, University of Advancing Technology, and she's going to be speaking about doing forensics on virtualized systems, which may seem a little esoteric till you realize people are actually deploying virtualized data centers. I'm now seeing service access providers now deploying virtualized firewalls. So they've got, kind of, in theory, colos within colos within colos, and everything's all virtualized. And as a result, these machines are going to get hacked at some point, and somebody's going to have to conduct forensics investigations on them. And running forensics investigations on virtualized machines is fairly different than running forensics on an actual physical asset. So Diane's going to walk you through some of the things to do. And with that.
Morning. Happy Sunday. Everybody hear me okay? Okay, because I'm kind of loud anyway, so if I get a little bit too loud, just wave your hand. I'm Diane Barrett. I'm from the University of Advancing Technology. And this morning, I don't really this is not going to be a very, very heavy technical talk. What I'm going to talk about is some of the things that people that investigate computer crimes need to be aware of as far as where we are going with the technologies that are out there. And I talk a lot about virtualization. A couple years back, when virtualization first started becoming popular, I kind of thought about it, and I'm going, it's just a passing fad. People aren't going to really pay a whole lot of attention to this. And then some of my students are like, no, really, we're using this stuff in real life. So I talked to some of my friends in blue, and I asked them about, what do you do and how do you investigate a virtual machine? And they looked at me like I had 5 heads and changed the subject. So I'm going, okay, well, maybe really there is something to this. A little bit about my background. I am currently a professor at the University of Advancing Technology. I also do computer forensics work. I work for a contractor up in Phoenix. And what we do is all civil work. We do no criminal work whatsoever. We had one criminal case that involved child porn, and it was decided that we probably weren't going to do any more of that. We kind of leave that to the law enforcement. And before that, I spent 7 years in software development. I grew up on DOS, so I've been around for a long time. I've watched a lot of software evolve. The software that we built was really, really bad. And you couldn't just burn a CD and send it out. And so what I did was I spent a lot of my time going out to the different companies that we worked with and integrated our software into their environment so that everything would play nice. I've evolved quite a bit since then. So getting back to virtual environments, I went out and I looked at, when I started looking at virtual environments, there were a couple things that I found out there. One vendor site says that you can use their software and it won't actually install anything anywhere. Another vendor says that there is absolutely no information left behind on the computer. Believe it? No. Okay. To me, everything leaves traces. And so a part of what I've done the last year is went through and looked at a lot of these softwares and looked at where they leave traces, looked at things that they do. A lot of vendors aren't very forthcoming with what it is that they're doing. And there's one that we'll talk about that just came out a little ways down the road. So what I want to go over today is, number one, to talk about the methods that are used for server and desktop virtualization. Then I want to talk about how virtualization actually affects a forensic investigation. And then lastly, we're going to talk about the methods that you can use to find virtual artifacts and be able to identify when there are virtual activities. And that's one of the key things about investigations is, even though there might not be processes and there might not be methods in place, but if you realize that this is something that you may have to look at a little closer, it's going to give you some ideas. So the virtual market, everybody's doing it, right? Everything I pick up, every tech magazine that I pick up, virtualization, everybody's virtualizing things. They predict that, and I think this came out of Gartner Research. Gartner Research predicts that within 3 years there will be between 480 million and 846 million virtualized PCs. It's a lot of virtualization. So, and here are some recent examples of virtualization. Probably about a month ago, HP released a 96 terabyte virtual storage device. And this is a virtual array, and the array initializes, the virtualization comes up at system initialization. So it's already prepped, it's ready to go. InstallFree. InstallFree actually has a software piece that converts a Windows desktop into an encrypted virtual machine file. It then stores this file on a server somewhere and is downloadable at any time. Now, this is the way to go, right? Do your stuff inside a virtual machine, encrypt it, store it somewhere, pull it back down whenever you're ready to go. I don't know. We have problems now in the forensic world even trying to figure out how to examine encrypted regular machines. How now are we supposed to examine encrypted virtual machines? I don't know. Why? Any ideas why is there so much virtualization out there? Why do we have so much virtualization? Any ideas?
Saves money, data center footprint.
Right. And besides that, right, who is it? Isn't it AMD is working on a 12-core processor?
Oh, farther than that, they're talking about 64 and 128 cores for the next 2 years.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I saw something the other day I was reading about that AMD is pretty far on their 12-core processor. So we've built this technology that we don't have the applications to run on top of. And so the best way to take advantage of that hardware is to virtualize it. And I'm not going to go a whole lot into that. I told you this is not a real heavy tech talk. So I'm not going to go a whole lot into the virtual machine environment. Virtualization basically is done through what's considered a hypervisor, and that's just a layer that controls how the access to the computer's processors and memory is shared. It's kind of a proxy between the virtual system and the physical resources. And there are different types of hypervisors out there. You will see what they call type 1, which is a bare metal. Then you'll see the type 2. Some of them actually are the layer right above the hardware so that it can interact with the hardware. Some of them are a layer in between the installed operating system and the virtual operating system. And there's a lot of information out there on hypervisors and the type that there are. So currently, for virtual technology players, we have a lot of companies out there. These and realize that this is not all of them. These are just some of the major ones that you'll find out there. VMware. Hey, VMware. I like VMware for the simple reason that it has a virtual appliance marketplace. Has anybody been to VMware's virtual appliance marketplace? Right? You just go, you download Virtual Player, you pick what you want, you download it, and away you go. And it's wonderful. Pre-configured appliances, and they have all kinds of appliances. They have firewalls, they have routers, they have all kinds of things that you can download. So it's not limited to just operating systems. And besides the virtual appliance marketplace, they do also, yes, sir?
They had a competition last year. The virtual appliance that won was a firewall for your Windows box. Anti-spam, antivirus, you just set it up there, good to go. So.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, huh?
It's very cool.
It is. And besides the appliance marketplace, they do also offer server and desktop technologies as well. Microsoft has server and desktop technologies as well. And with their Server 2008, they have now created their own hypervisor called Hyper-V. Parallels. Parallels is meant for Macintosh operating systems. And Parallels has a marketplace similar to VMware, except I think they probably have maybe, about 300 appliances or so, whereas VMware probably has close to 1,000. So Parallels is very similar to VMware in that it has a virtual appliance marketplace as well, and it does offer other technologies, servers, desktops, that kind of thing. Citrix just bought Zen. And they have their hypervisor is called Zen Express. And I think it was in November of last year, Sun bought VirtualBox. And VirtualBox was developed by Innotech. VirtualBox is an open source virtual environment, and it runs on just about anything. So it will run on Windows, Linux, all different kinds. Now realize too, with a lot of these technologies, some of them those of you, have any of you implemented virtual technologies in your workplace? Okay. What kind of issues are you having? Any of you having issues with?
VMware, there's significant performance impact.
Right.
Because it's full virtualization.
Right.
So I've been looking into OpenVC and Solaris Zones for OS virtualization.
Okay.
For my workloads, that works fine.
Okay. What other kind of issues besides performance might you find?
Segregation, networking segregation within virtualized environments.
Right.
It's a big issue. Hardware issues.
Hardware issues is a good thing. I'll tell you what, trying to get thumb drives to work with yeah, you know, right? Trying to get thumb drives to work with a lot of the virtual environments is just about crazy. And we tried all kind of things. I mean, they're like virtual thumb drives that you can you're supposed to download the application, and it allows you to use the thumb drive. And we had some issues. One of the things that I can tell you is that we had, at the university, periodically they changed my hardware, and I had a really, really bad hardware experience last semester. And so I have a lab, and all the hardware was supposed to be standardized. And I had like 4 different motherboards, and I don't know how many different kind of memories. The machines had memory mix. Anyway, what happened is, and I used a lot of virtualization, and we had VirtualBox on, and there was something in the hardware that did not like VirtualBox, and so every time I opened a browser, the machine just automatically booted itself. And I mean, which is really odd that opening a browser would cause that to happen. And it could be Firefox, it could be IE. So it was just something about that process that caused the hardware to go, I don't know, I can't work with this and this, and then it would just reboot itself. So you do end up having some hardware issues as well. But as virtualization advances, I'm sure that we'll fix that, and that we won't have those kind of issues. All right, virtualization of phones. Okay, we heard a whole lot about phones the last couple of days, and that Motorola's not the only company that's working with VirtualLogic. I think that Cisco, and there's a couple other companies that are working with them as well. But what they're doing is they want to do embedded virtual machines so that you can have one phone that runs any kind of app that you want. Mm-hmm. And all you do, and that's all built on the SIM?
Sorry?
That's all built on the SIM? Yeah, I think I read that it's built on the SIM. But anyway, so this is really a pretty cool thing, too. Now, realize that from my standpoint of view, a lot of this stuff is like nightmarish for me. Okay? Doing cell phone and PDA forensics in itself is hard enough. I mean, you don't have the applications. You can't read this. I was working with a phone that had was it CE, but there was some kind of incompatibility between the phone and the operating system, and I couldn't even get an image off the phone. And now we're talking about embedding virtual machines, and I'm going, oh my God, I don't know how I'm going to deal with this stuff. Anyway, virtual boxes. Have any of you seen those little virtual boxes that are out there? Okay, Pano is one. Pano makes this, and I think probably the reason why people like this is because they're very sexy looking. They're these little square silver boxes. Okay, now supposedly they have nothing in them. They have USB ports that allows the user to plug in their keyboard, their mouse, their monitor, and then that little box hooks them into a virtual, and Pano only works with Microsoft products, so currently it will only work with XP and Vista, I believe. And yes, sir.
Is this like the WISE terminals with terminal services, or is this local to the device?
It's probably based a lot on like RDP and stuff like that, and because there are different protocols. There's
essentially hosted data, right?
Right, it's hosted data, right. It's not all the boxes. The box is it's almost like a dumb terminal. All the box is doing is just acting as a communicator between those devices and the virtual device. Okay, or in the virtual machine. Okay, and Pano is not the only one that makes these, although Pano probably is the first company who developed these. I was a couple weeks ago, last month. I was it was strictly a university presentation, and there was a guy that had one. It was similar to the Pano, but it wasn't made by Pano. So there's other companies that are coming out with that.
Well, why is this had a terminal for a long time that was like that? It was just keyboard, network, mouse, monitor, and connected to a central.
But was it sexy looking? I think that's what sells a lot of it. It's this sleek, nice little silver box. People go, oh, check this out. Because you got to realize that, for people that want to move to this kind of thing, to get your users to buy into it is really going to be hard. They don't want to give up those big boxes they have.
Especially across the board. I mean, we've seen this in call centers and things that are very popular. But your power users or whatever, the ones who usually end up doing the data compromises, right?
Right.
They don't want this. You're absolutely right.
That's right. They don't want them. And so in order to sell them, look at this. It's a nice, sexy little box. It looks good. Look how good it looks on your desktop. And so they kind of make them so that they can sell them to the user environment, because that's going to be a hard sell. And then there's another, Inboxer makes this virtual appliance, and it's called an anti-risk virtual appliance. And they're pretty much trying to market that to a lot of companies for compliance reasons. And so what they want for that, it says, okay, what we do is we can filter email, we can look through emails coming through, and we can tell you if anything that's going out of your company is sexually harassing. We can tell whether you're complying with HIPAA, we can tell whether you're complying with PII, those kind of things. And so, again, they call it an anti-risk virtual appliance. And that has separate software. However, it does work with VMware as well, so I think that they have interfaces that allow you to use other virtualization options. Then we have virtual applications. Okay, we have VMware recently bought Thinstall. And with Thinstall basically is streamed virtual apps. However, with this, there's no way to tell what users are using the applications. Okay, so you're like, well, okay, who's using the app? We don't know. All we know is that it's going out there somewhere. And then there's another company that does Spice Protocol, and that is streamed as well. Now, MojoPack, which we'll talk about in a little bit, MojoPack is an individually contained. Yes, sir.
Is this like SoftGrid, where it actually gives you, like Microsoft just recently bought them, gives you a virtual file system, virtual registry, and it's its own container, or is this something different?
No, this is just, and we'll talk a little bit about some of that, because some of them are actual virtual containers. This is not an actual virtual container. This is just a streaming application. So in other words, what may happen is that you may have an instance, and let's just say, and I think, who was it that's doing it? There's a company out there that's doing it. It's a financial company. And what they have is they have a whole bunch virtual machines that they make for the operating systems. And so what may happen is the user may come in and say, well, okay, I log in and I get XP. Now, I need to use Office, and even though it technically should be pre-installed in that virtual machine, what they do is they have the applications maybe on separate servers where they just stream that application as they need it. Kind of almost software as a service is how a lot of that works. Okay, so the next thing is we're going to look at the stuff that's used for individual environments. MojoPack. MojoPack probably was one of the first virtual environments that there is, and I have MojoPack on here. I have it up and running. There's the actual environment itself. We'll talk about virtual traces, and we'll talk a little bit about this. However, how this works is this is installed on a thumb drive, and you plug in the thumb drive, and the environment comes up. And this actually is a virtual XP environment. So if I went here to my Start menu, and I did this Start menu, you see I have all my applications here. So I can, and technically I can, if I want to, I can install Office in MojoPack, and I can also have Office installed on the host machine, so that you can actually have two sets of applications running on the same machine, one off the thumb drive, and then one on the host machine itself. Now, realize that you need licensing for both those installs. You can't share them.
And how big is your image size? I mean, did you run any utilities to really strip down XP to just include what you need? Or?
It's the company that does this is stripped down XP. I have this on one of those 4 gig micro drives.
Okay.
And I have a bunch of stuff on there because one of the things, too, that I like to use, because I'm like a little bit mean, and for my classes, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll give them an image, and it'll be a MojoPack image, and they're going, but where's, like, all the install files? Because it has its own registry. However, it's not a full Windows install. And so when they start going in and they look at it, they go, what is this?
And is it its own virtualization runtime, or is it VMware, or what is it used for the runtime? Or is it just an application?
It's just an application. It doesn't use VMware. Does it have its own? It has its own. It uses a lot of the host operating resources.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's its own application, but it does use a lot of the host resources. Okay. So getting out of that, then let me see. Can I escape out of this? Oh, I'm going to switch to my host. Okay. Switch back to my host and back to where we were. Okay. Come on. Okay, so that's MojoPack. The next one is Mocha 5. And I have Mocha 5, and what I'm going to do with this, I'm just going to show you the basic interface to it. I'm not going to start it up. And I like Mocha 5 because, and actually they've redone it a little bit, but it's Mocha 5 Creator. One of the best things about this is you go and you download live PCs from their site. So it's kind of like VMware or Parallels, except you run it off a thumb drive. Okay, and it has Fearless Browser. Okay, Fearless Browser, that's the little turtle that you saw in that slide that I have when you start that up. And this all runs off Virtual Player. So this actually is VM. It runs off a Virtual Player. So you have Fearless Browser, and then I downloaded DSL because I wanted to have some other PCs on here. But down on the bottom there, you see where it says Add Live PCs. You can go through and you can add live PCs. So you can either download new live PCs from their website, or you can create your own, which is really cool. So I like that about Mocha 5. All right, so let me see. Where am I here now? Let's close this up here. Go back to the presentation. Okay, so that's Mocha 5. There we go. All right. Next is Portable Virtual Privacy Machine. Okay, and this is done by MetroPipe. This is a DSL, and it's designed to boot from a USB drive. So you download it to the USB drive, you plug it into the machine, and you actually boot right from it, and it boots into the operating system itself. And it's based off DSL, but it uses QEMU, so it doesn't use VMware or anything like that. The next one, of course, is your VMware player environments, and this is one of my favorites, Backtrack 2 with Metasploit 3. Okay, you just go, you download it, and you can do whatever you want with it. They call it the Ethical Hacker Network. I don't know, it's got a lot of cool toys on it, though. And So I kind of mess around with this. But this is the VMware Player environments for those of you who have not ever messed around with that. This is so you just download it. You download VMware Player. You download the appliance you want, and away you go. Okay, so we have all this virtualization stuff out there. We have all these people doing all kinds of things. We have applications. We have operating systems. And we have all kinds of hypervisors. Late last year, the Distributed Management Task Force, they actually created an open standard. And what this does is this creates a standard for developers to work on discovering, managing the life cycles, controlling virtual resources, and monitoring virtual systems. So we actually have some type of standard out there for managing the life cycles of virtual machines. And I read an article not too long ago, and it was called the Virtual Machine Graveyard. I mean, how many people actually create virtual machines or virtual environments, and then they blow them away for some reason, and what do they do with them? They're like all over the place. So you have these virtual machine graveyards all over the place that sometimes people aren't even aware that they're out there. Well, it kind of would be like, let's just say, for example, that I made a virtual machine for myself in XP, and then I decided that I didn't really want it, or I wasn't going to use it, and so I created another virtual machine that I used a version of Linux that I used Ubuntu because I like that better. Well, sometimes people don't delete that XP machine. I'm not going to use it anymore. And the way that virtual machines, they store as a file, just one file extension. So it's not a whole operating system. So sometimes you might find like a bunch of VHDs or VMDKs around on a system.
You just need to manage the life cycle and reclaim that disk space. Otherwise, you start running out of disk space really fast.
Right. And what happens, too, is a lot of times people don't reclaim until they run out of space. They're going, we don't have any space. Well, look at this. I got all this stuff. I mean, a lot of network administrators a lot of times are no better than the normal user.
Right.
You got stuff all over the place. As long as you got the space for it, who cares?
This is why you need retention policies and some sort of.
We're going to talk about data retention policies with VM applications like way at the end because that's a big issue.
Right.
So. Okay, so how does this affect forensics? Why should forensics people care about this stuff? Okay, this quote came from Microsoft. It came right off Microsoft's site, and it was about their virtual technology. The idea that you can make pools of dynamic resources with unlimited capacity available to users anywhere at any time is extraordinary. Okay, do we have issues? If I'm going to allow dynamic resources with unlimited capacity to be available to users anywhere at any time, how am I going to figure out what you were doing? How am I going to figure out where you've been? So, and we do have, not that we don't have forensic means, because network forensics, and let me say that network forensics will catch most of this stuff. If you're doing live forensics, it's different. However, a lot of companies and a lot of people still do the hard drive imaging. I mean, the company that I work for, if we have a case that involves 22, 32 drives, Mark flies around the country and images those drives, and we bring them back, and we build cases out of them, and we analyze them. And that's the way that a lot of forensic companies work. It's very hard, and I cannot, for the life of me, I cannot get him to go to live forensics. Now, he'll update all the machines to Vista or a new operating system as soon as it comes out, not knowing what the issues may cause for data that we put on those issues. However, I cannot get him to go to live forensics because he is of the mindset that, when you go to court, there still may be issues with the procedures that you're using to do live forensics. And so he likes to know this is tried and true methods. These are tried and true methods. The stuff's not going to get questioned in court, and so this is the way that we're doing it. So that's one of the main issues that it presents. So you have mobile employees now. So what this means is this means that I can leave my hardware behind. Okay, all I need to take with me is, and I don't know am I done with Mocha? Mojo Pack, yeah, Mojo Pack's going to scream when I do this, but That's okay. This little thing right here, right? Okay, how many of you have these? This is 4 gig. It compresses to 12. Oh yeah, whatever. Okay.
Walk out with everything.
Right. Yeah. So and what happens with this is, and they make these all the way. I got this a long time ago. I got this probably close to a year ago. This is 4 gig, but I mean, even with 4 gig, I can install a virtual operating system on it and have everything that I need, no problem. Okay, the other one that I have is a little bit bigger, but I think I have 3 virtual operating systems running on it. So, anyway. So something this size is easy enough for somebody to carry. It also does present other issues as well, too, though, because if you're carrying around confidential data on this little piece here, then you end up with bigger problems, because this is like very, very easy to lose. I always make jokes about it. The case for this is a little pink case, and it's got this really long keychain thing on it, and, I'm going to make earrings out of mine, so I know I won't lose them. But anyway, so, let me see, do I need to go back? Okay, no, so you have users can carry their environments with them. So there may be very little traces left. So let me get this straight. We're going to push out, in a networked environment, we're going to push out virtual operating systems from the server. Apps are going to be serviced as needed. So now we're going to have desktops as a service. Okay? At the end of the day, what happens? Everything goes away. Right? At the end of the day, everything goes away. All right. So traditional methods now are not going to be enough to find evidence in this kind of environment. In the environments that I showed you, your browsing and your multimedia history stay inside the virtual machine. So there may be very few traces that are left on the host PC, if there even is a host PC. Because by the time you get to it as an investigator, there may not be a host PC. It may have been deleted.
Especially if it's one of those terminal boxes.
Right. What did you do? Well, I don't know. You're using, RDP or whatever it is that you're using. And so you end up having you really end up having some issues. All right. We're going to talk about some traces. Some traces that you'll find from some of the systems that I've showed you. MojoPack. MojoPack, when you start up MojoPack and you first log into it, the first thing is it has this nice little menu that comes up. And it says, do you want to copy all your personal documents and your personal items to the drive? Which you can do. Okay, if I'm copying from host to USB, am I not going to find MRUs? Am I not going to find copies? I'm going to find evidence that stuff has been copied. Now, one of the things about MojoPack is that access to the hard drive itself, access to the C drive is eliminated once you actually start the environment. And I probably should have showed you that before I so rudely pulled it out of the slot. But the hard drive itself you cannot access. However, you can still access the CD-ROM and other drives as well. So the only thing it does do is it doesn't allow you to actually access the C drive. It needs administrative rights to run on the host machine. So if you don't have administrative rights on the host machine, you can't use MojoPack unless you install their application called Usher. Now, Usher allows you to use MojoPack in a limited capacity where you don't need administrative rights. However, Usher has to be installed on the host machine. Okay, so if you're... Huh?
As administrator or non-administrator?
As an administrator. So, and I think that the theory behind that for MojoPack is that you can allow users to use MojoPack in a limited capacity. See, because a lot of, when MojoPack first came out, it was meant for the everyday user. And now they've gone into the enterprise, and that's why they came out with Usher, because people are going, okay, this is a big problem. I don't want to have users having admin rights on their machine. And so they go, well, okay, you know what? We'll give you this app here, Usher. You install this, and then the user can use it, and they don't need to have admin rights. And it currently only runs on XP. So if you're using Vista or you're using anything else, MojoPack's not going to run. Okay, MojoPack has its own separate registry and shell. If you install it and you look at what's on here after you're done, it has a small registry and it has a shell. But one of the things too that you'll find about a lot of these virtual environments currently that are running off thumb drives is the thumb drives themselves and the capacity are not powerful enough to run those applications sufficiently. And so it uses a lot of the host resources. And the MojoPack that I showed you, I think, is the second version of it. The first version of it was so slow. It was horrible. And I have a gig of RAM in this machine, so it's not like a really heavy-duty use machine. But I'll tell you, it took forever for it to load the user profile and load the system files. And I'm going, my God, I don't know how anybody could even use this. And so with the second version of it, they made it a little bit better. However, it implements paging between memory and the hard drive to take place on the host PC instead of the portable drive itself. So with that said, if you're looking for remnants of MojoPack, you're going to look at your page file and probably your memory processes. And I think later on today somebody's doing a forensic presentation on memory, right? Yeah. Yeah. Cool. I want to see that. Anyway, the other thing too is that the process that it runs is Ring 3 Main Win32. And that's named after the company that makes it. It also phones home. The minute it starts up, it phones home and it goes, hey, are there any updates out there for me? I need to know if there's new stuff. So it phones home. And the last thing is that I went through and I looked at everything on my system. And I've done, and I've had my students help me with this, do a lot of work on trying to figure out the differences between these systems. And it stores a PVM, okay, which is a virtual machine.sys file, and it also stores the icon on the host machine. So if nothing else, you will at least find these two files, and you find these two files and you go, well, okay, I need to probably look at other stuff because obviously somebody was using MojoPack on this machine. Mocha 5. Mocha 5 is going to leave stuff all over the place just by virtue of its nature for the simple reason that it uses VMware Player. Okay. Number one, when you shut it down, when you go to shut down that virtual machine, and it saves the virtual state, but the first thing that it's going to do is going to go, hey, you know what? It's going to be a lot easier the next time I start if you leave this stuff installed. So, do you want to leave VMware Player installed? So you have the choice of leaving VMware Player installed or not. Okay, it also streams and prefetches the live PCs. If you go to your My Documents after you've used Mocha 5, you're going to find at least 3 folders that it creates in there that it doesn't take with it when you unplug it. And it's My Live PCs, My Live PC Documents, and there's one more, but it creates 3 very distinct folders that all have Live PC in them. Of course, if you didn't know what you were looking for, Microsoft has a lot of live stuff out there, right? So you might think, oh, well, maybe the user was just using some kind of Microsoft Live application, all right? Session changes. Session changes are captured in separate file systems on a RAM disk, and again, Mocha 5 phones home. The first thing it does when it starts up is it goes out and says, hey, is there new stuff out there for me? And I hadn't had that in for a long time, probably about a month or so. And last month I went in to update it, and it took forever because it had all kind of new stuff, and they had a new version of the app. And so that's the other thing too, is that it phones home and it updates a lot of its stuff. Now, both MojoPack and Mocha 5 will show in your most recently used items in your registry. And that's provided that you catch the machine within a certain period of time. Mocha 5 also creates a folder called Mocha 5 USB Clean, and it creates a temporary folder that has 23 Mocha 5 related files in it. Okay, so if you're looking for this stuff, go through and look in the temporary file. Look in your registry, because you'll find a lot of these things that still remain in the registry. Now, the portable virtual privacy machine, this is a little bit different because this one actually is geared to boot right from the thumb drive. And I said earlier it's based on DSL and QEMU. However, we found for some reason that once it started up, it makes some changes to the ntuser.dat and the ntuser.log files. There were also traces of it in the page file .sys, and it prefetches data. And again, it phones home. So a lot of these things, your first indication is that it phones home. VMware Player. Okay, VMware Player, for those of you that worked with VMware, you know that there were processes, there were files, there are file references to VMware and VMX. There are references in the registry that reference VMware. You'll also see that what's one of the biggest giveaways that somebody's used a virtual environment on their machine. It creates VMware adapters, right? Creates at least two virtual adapters in your network connections. So, however, if you're already using a virtual environment and this stuff's already on the machine, you might have a hard time telling whether the user was using a pre-approved virtual machine or whether they were using a different virtual machine. So that's one of the things that you kind of want to keep in mind. Okay, VirtualBox items of interest. This has processes there. There's a VirtualBox service process that's called VBox SVC. And again, with this, you probably would find this more so in a live investigation than you would on a dead drive. And again, it also has a process that was started, and it starts with the start VM parameter. So again, with those, as far as what you would find on a dead drive, you might have some issues. Then, besides all the portable operating systems that we have that can run off thumb drives, we also have portable apps that you can download. So now we have companies that make portable apps as well, specifically for your thumb drives. So general tips in an investigation. Some of the things that you're going to look at if you look at link files, links where somebody accessed something on the thumb drive and that link no longer exists. And that should be common in any forensic investigation. However, you probably need to pay a little bit more specific attention to that when we're talking about virtual environments. You want to look at prefetch files. You want to look at the page files. And then any unique identifiers that are associated with the program, some of the things that I brought up, with Mocha 5 or Mojo or Mojo Pack. And one of the things that's very, very odd, if you're doing, and I probably have that a little bit later on, if you're doing a live investigation, Mocha 5 makes a secure connection to 2 ports, and the website that it goes to is privatebackgroundchecks.com. Which to me is odd. I haven't found any link between the two. However, it doesn't mean that it's not hidden, or it doesn't mean that it's out there somewhere and I haven't found it yet. But that's if you're doing a live investigation and you look at and you do a netstat and you see a connection, you can almost positively tell that the user has that running. Okay, so then you're going to look for artifacts and processes, file systems in the registry, artifacts in memory. Again, the virtual adapters, any specific process instructions and capabilities. Now, in a corporate environment, the easiest way to avoid these kind of situations is to not allow thumb drives. Will it happen? Probably not. Probably not. You have people that need to have those thumb drives, right? Although there are a lot of companies that are seriously taking a look at it security-wise. Group policy now has a lot of good stuff in there for not allowing users to use thumb drives. If you are, yes, sir.
Is there any way to only allow them to use it if it's encrypted? Is there, some sort of mini EFS on there or something? Is there a group policy for that? Because I've seen it, you just completely disable it, but is there any way to be a little more granular?
You know what? I don't know right offhand. Do you know the answer to that?
There's third-party tools that can do that, only allows custom devices or even serialized devices, so you can register certain thumb drives for either certain users or certain machines. So again, there's third-party tools for all that.
Do they tie in with group policy though?
I don't know if they have extensions for that, or if it's just you're running the client piece on the managed.
Yeah, they may or may not. Sometimes third party applications with group policy sometimes has some issues. But one of the things that you need to keep in mind, though, is that these things should specifically be spelled out in your security policies. I mean, as a corporation, you got to do that kind of stuff. You can't just be letting users run rampant and not have any kind of policy. And in the policies, you really need to spell out who can use them, under what conditions. And speaking of encryption, I mean, one of the best things for you to do is for the corporation themselves to buy those drives, encrypt them, and then issue them, and then only allow access based on that issuing ID or that device ID. So, but that all has to be spelled out in your group policies. The other thing, too, is that because a lot of these applications use the host operating system and they use the host resources, a lot of your application layer security stuff can probably track this. You might have logs that will say, okay, this user was here, this user did this. So in a corporate environment, it might be a little bit easier to find. In a home environment, those of you that actually have to seize anything from a home environment, they need to be examined very carefully. I mean, something this size I could put in my mouth and swallow very easily. I mean, I could stick it in my hair. You'd never know what was there. I mean, those things that, we make things so small now. I was reading a case the other day where somebody had a bunch of some unsavory material on a bunch of small drives like this, and they took a pack of juicy fruit and they unwrapped all the gum, and they put all these inside the little foils, and they put it back in the pack of gum. Okay, if you're seizing stuff in a home environment, what are you going to do? Seize the gum, the mints, everything? I mean, come on. But, it does happen. People find ways to hide stuff that they don't want to have found. And with us making devices smaller and smaller, it just makes it that much easier.
And that all goes back to, it depends on what you're investigating and what the risk is.
Right.
How much time and money you want to spend on it.
Right. Because a lot of times we get stuff and it's like, well, there's nothing on this drive. Well, okay, why is there nothing on this drive? Is it because we're not looking in the right places? Is it because the stuff was accessed elsewhere? I mean, okay, and that's what's going to happen in a lot of forensic investigations. And people are going to start looking at this stuff. They're going to go, well, okay, there's nothing here. The guy's guilty of sin. Where's the stuff? So a lot of it is kind of, you're right, knowing where to look and that kind of thing. How am I doing on time? Am I close? 10 minutes?
Yeah,
okay. VMware, virtual machines basically are, and this is what we were talking about earlier that you had asked about that a lot of virtual machines, so applications, registries, and other components, but they're bundled into one single file. And so part of the problem with forensics is that forensic software can't look at these files.
Even with VMware and Microsoft having released that information, there's no software out there to parse it? Because,
There's not. And believe you me, I looked, and I'll tell you what, I tried some I have ways to do it that is like so convoluted that if I ever had to explain it in a court of law, they'd go, what were you thinking? But sometimes it's the only way to get the stuff. You got to do it from here to here to here to here. Because in a normal investigation, if you need to send something to the attorney, all you do is you go, okay, here's the doc file, you export it, you zip it up and you send it to them, and hopefully they have Word on their machine that they can examine it. With the virtual machine, number one, if you export it, how are you going to open it? The minute you open it, you change access times, you change stuff. Okay, so you need some way to convert this stuff so that you can actually examine it. So we don't have tools.
What about V2P, the virtual and physical? Say, take a virtual thing and dump it to a physical hard drive and send that hard drive. Because there are tools built in to go both ways. V2V, physical, virtual, physical, and virtual. So you could do it that way. Just use native tools offline.
Okay, but if you do that, then what? So then that attorney has to put that hard drive into a machine somewhere?
Well, I was referring more to standard imaging. You could do it that way, and then just examine that hard drive like you normally would.
Well, what I'm looking at is I'm looking at a simplified process. I want to find some kind of simplified process where I could take any kind. And the thing of it is, it depends on what kind of virtual image it is. Okay, because some of them you can do that too. And so what I'm looking at is, okay, we need to have some kind of documented processes on how to do this stuff. We need tools to help us do this.
Well, both Microsoft and VMware have tools to do that. I know those aren't the only solutions out there, but that's the majority.
Right, but forensic investigation-wise, as far as sending this information to an attorney or somebody to review, it would be a whole lot easier. Because the other thing too is, don't forget that after you do that, then you need to be searching for material. You need to export material, and so if you have to explain this process in a court of law, sometimes you end up with convoluted processes. Our courts right now have a hard time even understanding computer crimes that to explain to them. But you're right. There are ways to do it. However, they're a little bit kludgy and convoluted, and so the better ways to do that would be to have documented processes and tools that we could actually use to do that. Also, too, there's a number in the difference of files between physical and virtual operating system installs. One of the guys from NIST did hashes on them, and there's a huge number of differences in between what is a physical operating system install and what is a virtual operating install. So is it live or is it Memorex? Do you know? Okay? Do you know what that environment is? Okay, and I'm sure that many of you have probably heard about the red pill, the blue pill. Joanne Rakowski does a whole lot of research into that on being able to find virtual machines based on the relocation of sensitive data structures, and I'm not going to go into that. There are tools out there that are Scooby-Doo and Jerry. I don't know if any of you have seen these. They're just simple little DOS, they're command line tools, and you just run the tool and it says this is a virtual machine, this is a real machine. Okay, now, that kind of stuff might be useful in a live investigation, but I don't know how useful they would be if you were doing a dead drive investigation. Okay, so here's some of the challenges. Cincinnati Bell is pushing out 800 virtual desktops to users daily using 12 images. Okay, if something happens, where's my stuff? Who knows? Virtual machines are too easy to make and too hard to kill. Now, it's good that vendors offer lifecycle management for it, so, we are making some progress there. But VM, where when a machine is no longer in use, it gets archived. Okay, so VMware archives your virtual machines if you don't use them anymore. All right, so what you need to take away from the talk today, virtualization of environments is growing. As examiners, we need to be more aware of how this is going to affect our investigations. Will we now have virtual crimes? Well, where's the evidence? Well, I don't know. It came off a virtual operating system and they used a virtual stream app and I don't know. It was run through a virtual appliance. We have a hard enough time convicting people on live machines the way that they are. Now, what do we do about this stuff? Okay? Data retention policies. If you are using virtual machines, you probably need to think about some kind of data retention policy. What are you doing with these? Okay, they hold stuff, right? Federal Rules of Procedure say all your data must be turned over, and it must be turned over in a certain number of days. So you better think about maybe having some data retention policies. And the last thing is, any of you that are willing to write some tools that you want tested, let me know. I'll be more than happy to be a guinea pig. Questions? No? Is everybody awake now? Yeah? All right, good. Thank you.